You need to understand this deeply. Detachment is not punishment, it is clarity, and clarity is the one thing an avoidant dynamic cannot survive without changing. Because when you were chasing, when you were explaining, when you were trying to fix the silence, you were unknowingly sending one message over and over. You were saying, even if you don't show up fully, I will still carry the connection for both of us. And I know you didn't mean to do that. You were just loving the way you know how to love, with patience, with loyalty, with hope. But the result was that they never had to face the real cost of pulling away, because your heart kept paying the bill. Detachment is the moment you stop paying, not with anger, not with revenge, not with coldness, but with self-respect so calm that it becomes undeniable. It's you realizing that love does not need you to shrink, and connection does not require you to beg. Detachment is you stepping back from the role of prover, the role of explainer, the role of rescuer, and finally standing in the truth. If someone wants closeness with you, they must participate in it. And the moment you stop auditioning for affection, the moment you stop trying to be chosen by someone who keeps one foot out the door, you create a silence that is different from their silence. Yours is not avoidance, yours is peace. And that's why detachment isn't a game, it's a decision. A decision to stop confusing anxiety with love. A decision to stop letting inconsistency feel romantic just because it creates adrenaline. A decision to stop waking up and checking your phone like your worth is hidden inside their response. Because you know what that feels like? That little spike in your chest when you see their name. That rush of hope. That instant bargaining with yourself. Maybe this time it's different. Maybe this time they finally see me. But detachment is you putting your hand on your own heart and saying, I will not keep gambling my nervous system on someone else's mood. This is where the real emotional shift happens, because detachment doesn't start when you block them, or ignore them, or try to act unbothered. Detachment starts when you stop making their behavior the center of your day. It starts when you stop rearranging your mood around their distance. It starts when you stop telling yourself stories that protect them from accountability. It starts when you stop translating their inconsistency into excuses. Like they're busy, they're stressed, they had a hard childhood. They're not good at emotions, they're scared. And listen, those things might be true, but truth without responsibility becomes a trap, because empathy can become the chain that keeps you stuck. Detachment is you keeping your empathy, but removing your self-abandonment. It's you saying, I can understand you and still require consistency. I can care about you and still refuse confusion. I can love you and still choose myself. And when you do that, something changes in the air between you, because the old dynamic was built on your emotional availability being unconditional. They could pull back and you would lean in. They could disappear and you would hold the space. They could give crumbs and you would call it a meal because you were starving for certainty. But detachment removes the reward. It removes the safety net. And for the first time, they have to face the reality that you are not a permanent option. You are a person. That's why detachment feels so hard at first, because it's not just you letting go of them. It's you letting go of the version of you that kept trying to earn love. The version of you that believed if you were good enough, patient enough, pretty enough, soft enough, low maintenance enough, they would stop running. And it hurts because you're grieving more than a person. You're grieving a hope you invested in, a future you imagined, a story you kept alive in your head when the reality kept disappointing you. Detachment is the moment you stop feeding the fantasy and you finally face the facts, and facts can feel like heartbreak, even when they set you free. And here's the part that is going to hit you. Your detachment is not about making them miss you. It's about making you visible to yourself again. Because when you're attached to an avoidant, you slowly disappear. Not all at once, not dramatically, but quietly. You start monitoring your words. You start walking on eggshells. You start overthinking every message. You start fearing that asking for normal love will push them away. You start editing your needs down to something small enough for them to tolerate, and then you call that compromise. But detachment is you returning to your full size, and yes, that will change how they respond, because the relationship can no longer run on your self-erasure. So when you detach, they feel it like a loss of control, even if they never admit it. Because before, they could keep you in a loop. Closeness, distance, and your heart kept running behind them like a child trying to catch a door before it closes. But detachment is you letting the door close without chasing it. And that creates a new problem for them. Because now, if they want access to you, they can't rely on you doing the emotional work. They have to show up. And if they don't, your detachment still wins because you stop suffering in slow motion. You stop spending your days waiting for someone to finally become consistent. You stop confusing longing with connection. You stop calling anxiety chemistry. You stop living in half-love, and you finally make space for something real. Because the most heartbreaking truth is that a lot of people don't leave avoidant dynamics because they stop loving. They leave because they finally start loving themselves enough to stop accepting pain as the price of being chosen. So if you're trying to detach right now, don't make it about proving a point. Make it about protecting your peace. Don't make it about getting a reaction. Make it about getting your life back. Let your detachment be soft, but firm. Let it be quiet, but unshakable. Let it be the moment you stop performing for love and you start living from self-respect, because the day you detach properly is the day you stop being controlled by their distance, and you start being guided by your own worth. Your calm creates a new kind of pressure, not the pressure of begging, not the pressure of arguing, not the pressure of chasing them down with paragraphs they won't answer, but the pressure of reality, the pressure of consequences, the pressure of you finally being a person with boundaries instead of a person with endless patience. And I need you to understand why this matters so much, because an avoidant can survive your emotions. They can even survive your anger, because as long as you are reacting, you are still orbiting them. As long as you are reaching out, explaining, trying to clear the air, they still feel like the center of your world, and that feeds the dynamic that keeps them comfortable. But the moment you become calm, truly calm, not fake calm, not silent because you're playing a game, but calm because you've accepted the truth and chosen yourself, something in them starts to tighten. Because your calm is not giving them a script to follow. Your calm is not giving them a predictable fight. Your calm is not giving them an emotional door to push open and close whenever they want. Your calm is simply showing them you are no longer moved by what used to move you. And that is the moment they feel the ground shift. You see, for a long time, your love was loud, not in a messy way, but in a committed way. You showed up, you cared, you tried, you worried, you did the emotional math every day, trying to figure out what version of yourself would finally make them choose consistency. And even when you said you were tired, even when you said you couldn't do this anymore, something in your energy still told them you weren't really leaving. Because your heart was still open, your hope was still alive, and they could feel it. They could feel that if they gave you a little warmth, you would soften. If they gave you a little attention, you would return. If they disappeared for a while and came back with a casual, "Hey," you would act like nothing happened, because you were so relieved they were back. That's not a judgment. That's just the reality of loving someone you want to believe in. But your calm changes the rules, because calm means you are no longer negotiating. Calm means you are no longer pleading. Calm means you are no longer trying to earn what should be freely offered in a healthy connection. And to an avoidant nervous system, that kind of calm can feel dangerous because it removes their ability to control closeness through distance. Because avoidance is not always about not caring, it's often about regulating. They regulate discomfort by pulling away. They regulate intimacy by creating space. They regulate vulnerability by staying vague. And when you used to react, they could regulate you too. Your reaction gave them feedback. Your pain gave them proof that they still mattered. Your chasing gave them the comfort of being wanted without having to fully risk being known. But when you become calm, you become unreadable to the old pattern, and the pattern starts to panic. That is the pressure your calm creates. It forces them to face what they've been avoiding, which is the possibility that you are not waiting anymore. The possibility that you are not available on demand. The possibility that they might actually lose you. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, permanent way, the kind of loss that doesn't come with a fight to reopen the door, the kind of loss that comes when someone finally stops returning. And what happens then is so important for you to recognize, because this is where a lot of people get pulled back in. When your calm creates that pressure, they may come closer, but they don't always come closer with honesty. Sometimes they come closer with a test. They send a message that is light, casual, almost meaningless, just to see if you still respond the way you used to. They may say something like, "Hope you're good," or "Thought of you," or they'll react to a story, like a small tap on the glass of your life, trying to see if you'll run to the door. They might even suddenly become sweet, because sweetness has always been the fastest way to soften your boundary. And if you mistake that for change, you'll break your own calm, and you'll hand them the old power again. Because the truth is, calm pressure doesn't always make them choose commitment. Sometimes it makes them choose control. They want to know if they still have access. They want to know if you're still emotionally available. They want to know if they can still pull the same strings and watch you move. Not because they are evil, but because the dynamic trained them that distance equals safety, and your calm threatens that safety. So you have to hold your calm like it is sacred. You have to protect it like it's the most valuable thing you've ever built, because it is. It's the first time you've been in your own life without constantly checking for their temperature. It's the first time you've been in your own body without living in anticipation. It's the first time you've stopped treating love like a problem you have to solve. And that calm is not weakness, it is strength. Because your calm says, I can love you and still not lose myself. Your calm says, I can miss you and still not chase you. Your calm says, I can feel pain and still not abandon my standards. And that is what creates the real pressure. It's not pressure that screams, it's pressure that stands there quietly and refuses to move. And that's when you'll see the avoidants' internal conflict. One part of them wants closeness because you were comfort, you were connection, you were safety in your own way, and they did feel something, even if they struggled to show it. But the other part of them fears that closeness will cost them control, cost them emotional exposure, cost them responsibility. So they hover, they circle, they test, they pull near and then step back. And your calm becomes the mirror that reflects their pattern back to them. Because when you are calm, you stop begging them to choose, and they have to actually choose. They can't hide behind your chasing anymore. They can't pretend the relationship just happened on your effort alone. They can't act like you're both equally invested when you're the one doing all the reaching. Your calm exposes the imbalance, and imbalance is uncomfortable because now they have to face a question they've avoided. Am I willing to show up in a real way, or do I only want access when it's convenient? And here's the heart of it. Your calm is not designed to punish them. It's designed to save you. Because you deserve a love that doesn't require you to become anxious to be noticed. You deserve a love that doesn't only wake up when you start leaving. You deserve a love that doesn't treat your peace like a threat. And when you choose calm, you are choosing a life where you no longer chase people who make you feel small. So if they respond to your calm with more tests, let that be information. If they respond with real words, real consistency, real ownership, let that be proof. But do not trade your calm for temporary warmth, because temporary warmth is what kept you trapped. Hold your calm not as a weapon, but as a boundary made of self-respect. And if they truly want you, they will rise to meet you there. And if they don't, you will still be standing in the one place you should have always been, on your own side. They start testing you differently, and you must read it clearly, because when you detach, you don't just change your energy, you change the balance of power. And that's when an avoidant who is used to controlling closeness through distance begins to reach for a new kind of control. Not always in an obvious way, not always with cruelty, not always with intention, but with patterns that are designed to answer one question: do I still have access to you? And this is where so many people lose their ground, because you've been starving for connection. So when any signal arrives, you want to believe it means something. A message, a like, a view on your story, a random hey, a sudden wave of warmth. You want to interpret it as love waking up. You want to tell yourself, they finally realized, they finally miss me, they finally care. And maybe they do miss you, maybe they do care, but missing you is not the same as choosing you, and caring is not the same as changing. And you have to keep your heart soft without letting your mind go blind. When an avoidant feels you stepping out of your old position, the predictable position, the position where you always reach, they often don't come forward with a full confession. They come forward with a test, because a test is safer than truth. Truth requires vulnerability. Truth requires responsibility. Truth requires them to risk rejection. But a test lets them probe without exposing themselves. A test lets them tap the wall to see if it's still there, and if it is, they can retreat without consequences. One of the most common tests is breadcrumbs, tiny little pieces of attention that look like connection but don't carry weight. A short message with no depth. A casual check-in with no follow-through. a "how are you" that doesn't lead to an honest conversation. It's like they want to keep the thread alive, but they don't want to hold it firmly. And it's tempting, because breadcrumbs still taste like hope when you've been hungry for love. But the danger is, if you treat breadcrumbs like a meal, you teach them they can keep feeding you small and still keep you around. Another test is sudden warmth, the version of them that shows up right when you stop chasing. They become attentive. They become curious. They start saying the things you've been waiting to hear, like they've been thinking about you, like they've missed you, like they feel something. And this is where you have to breathe, because sudden warmth is not proof of stability. It's often proof of panic. It's the nervous system response to losing control. It's the moment they feel you slipping, and they try to pull you closer, not always because they're ready, but because they're afraid. And you can tell the difference by what comes next. Real change moves slowly but consistently. Real change doesn't vanish after you respond. Real change doesn't only show up when you detach. If they are truly growing, they will keep showing up even after they feel safe again. But if it's just a test, the warmth will fade the moment they feel your back. They'll go quiet again. They'll become vague again. They'll return you to the same uncertainty you were escaping. Another test is jealousy cues, and this one can be subtle. They might ask questions about who you're talking to. They might suddenly want to know what you've been doing. They might start showing up in your space more, watching your stories, reacting to your posts, making little comments that hint at possessiveness without offering commitment. It's a way to re-establish emotional territory without doing emotional responsibility. They want to feel like you're still theirs, but they don't want to be accountable for treating you like a partner. Then there's the test of confusion, where they send mixed signals on purpose, because mixed signals keep you hooked. They might flirt and then disappear. They might apologize and then repeat the same behavior. They might say they care, but avoid any real conversation about the relationship. They might come close and then retreat, and the retreat makes you chase, because your nervous system wants resolution. Confusion is not an accident in these dynamics. Confusion is often the tool that keeps you emotionally engaged while they stay emotionally protected. And the most painful test of all is the accidental contact, the message that pretends it's nothing, the excuse, the random question, the "I found something that reminded me of you." The little doorway they create so they can step in without admitting they wanted to step in. Because what an avoidant struggles with is direct vulnerability. They don't want to say, "I miss you," because that sentence has weight. It has risk. It has accountability. So they disguise the need inside something casual. So if you don't respond, they can pretend it didn't matter. And if you do respond, they get the comfort of your presence without fully owning the desire. So what do you do when the tests come, especially when your heart still wants them? You respond with clarity, not with hunger. You respond with standards, not with anxiety. You do not punish them, but you do not reward inconsistency. You do not collapse into old patterns just because you received a signal. Because detachment is not you turning off your feelings. Detachment is you refusing to let your feelings lead you back into a cycle that breaks you. If they send breadcrumbs, you don't chase the loaf. If they send sudden warmth, you don't hand them your heart on the first day. If they try jealousy cues, you don't reassure them with your loyalty while they refuse to reassure you with commitment. If they send confusion, you do not try to decode it like it's a puzzle that will finally give you love. You simply choose clarity. You choose the kind of communication that says, "I am open to something real, but I am no longer available for something unclear." And this is where your emotional strength becomes the most beautiful thing about you. Because anyone can react. Anyone can chase. Anyone can be pulled back by a late night message and a few sweet words. But it takes a powerful heart to stay steady, to stay kind, and still say, "My standards are not negotiable." It takes a powerful heart to hold space for someone's growth while refusing to become the training ground for their inconsistency. So when they test you, don't ask, "How do I respond so they stay?" Ask, "How do I respond so I stay aligned with myself?" Because your detachment is not meant to make them behave. It's meant to protect your peace. And if they truly want you, they will stop testing and start showing up. They will stop hovering and start committing. They will stop keeping you in the gray zone and start choosing you in the light. Until then, let every test be information. Let it reveal where they are. Let it show you whether they want love or access. And if it's only access, let your detachment remain your sanctuary. Because the moment you learn to read their tests clearly is the moment you stop being controlled by them and you start being guided by your own worth. The real win is you becoming unmovable in self-respect, because detachment only changes them if it changes you first. And I know that sentence might sound simple, but it is the most emotional, most life-altering truth you will ever live through. Because for a long time your heart has been movable, not because you are weak, but because you are loving, movable by their tone, movable by their silence, movable by the smallest sign of warmth after a stretch of cold, movable by hope, even when hope kept costing you sleep, peace, and dignity. You kept telling yourself you were being patient, but deep down you were also being trained to accept uncertainty as normal, trained to accept emotional distance as a phase, trained to accept crumbs as progress, because you were afraid that if you asked for what you truly needed, you might lose them. Self-respect is the moment you stop building your life around that fear. It's the moment you realize that losing someone who cannot meet you in the middle is not the tragedy. The tragedy is losing yourself while trying to hold on to them. Because that's what happens in these dynamics. You don't just miss them, you begin to mistrust yourself. You begin to question your needs. You begin to feel guilty for wanting clarity. You begin to feel dramatic for wanting consistency. You begin to feel like love means waiting, proving, tolerating, enduring. And slowly, without meaning to, you start treating your own heart like it's too much, like it's an inconvenience, like it's something you should manage so someone else can stay comfortable. But self-respect changes that. Self-respect doesn't scream, it doesn't chase, it doesn't threaten, it doesn't beg. Self-respect is quiet and solid, like a door that closes gently but does not reopen for confusion. Self-respect is you saying, I can miss you and still not reach for you. I can love you and still not accept this. I can want you and still choose peace. And when you become unmovable, you become something the old version of you never believed you could be. You become safe for yourself. Because the biggest battle was never them. It was the part of you that kept abandoning yourself for connection. It was the part of you that thought, if I just do a little more, if I just stay a little longer, if I just forgive one more time, they will finally become consistent. It was the part of you that confused effort with value, like the more you suffered, the more real the love must be. But self-respect ends that bargain. It ends the idea that love is earned through pain. It ends the idea that your loyalty should be rewarded with distance. It ends the idea that you should have to shrink to be kept. And you need to know how self-respect looks in real life, because it's not a quote, it's a practice. Self-respect looks like not replying the second they reach out, just because your nervous system is desperate for relief. Self-respect looks like letting a message sit until you can respond from calm, not craving. Self-respect looks like not over-explaining your boundaries, because the right person doesn't need a 20-page essay to understand what basic respect means. Self-respect looks like not accepting vague words that lead nowhere. Self-respect looks like asking for clarity and meaning it. Self-respect looks like walking away from almost, even when almost felt like the closest thing you had to love for a long time. And the most heart-touching part is this. Self-respect will feel like grief before it feels like power. Because you are not just letting go of them, you are letting go of the fantasy that they will become the version of themselves you kept praying for. You are letting go of the idea that your love can carry what their fear refuses to hold. You are letting go of the role you played, the role of the one who waits, the one who understands, the one who stays. And when you stop playing that role, it can feel like you're losing your identity because you've been surviving on hope, and hope became your routine. But here is the breakthrough. When you become unmovable, you don't become cold, you become clear. You stop letting your emotions be used as a doorway back into the same cycle. You stop rewarding effort that only shows up when they feel you slipping away. You stop being impressed by temporary consistency. You stop believing that an apology is change, and you start measuring love by the only thing that truly matters, what happens over time. Because the old you would be moved by the right words. The new you is moved by the right patterns. The old you would melt when they finally sounded sincere. The new you watches if they stay sincere when it's inconvenient. The old you would reopen the door when they said they missed you. The new you asks, what are you doing differently? What are you building? What are you offering that is real? And this is not you being hard, this is you being wise, because you learned the difference between longing and loyalty, between attention and intention, between affection and commitment. And yes, your self-respect changes them, because it changes what they can get from you. They can no longer get emotional access without emotional responsibility. They can no longer get your warmth while giving you distance. They can no longer keep you as a backup plan while they avoid real intimacy. Your self-respect forces a decision. Not a decision made in the heat of an argument, but a decision made in the quiet, in the reality of consequences. Either they rise or they lose you. Either they show up or they watch you move on. Either they become consistent or they lose access to the person who kept making inconsistency feel acceptable. But listen carefully, the purpose is not to make them rise. The purpose is to make you rise. Because even if they never change, even if they never come back, even if they never explain, your self-respect still wins, because you stop living in emotional limbo. You stop waking up every day wondering where you stand. You stop checking for signs. You stop decoding silence. You stop giving your life away to someone who can't meet you with the same courage you bring to love. And one day you will feel it, not as a dramatic moment, but as a quiet freedom. You will notice you're breathing deeper. You will notice your chest doesn't tighten when your phone lights up. You will notice you're not thinking about them every hour. You will notice you're laughing again, sleeping again, living again. And you will realize detachment didn't take love away from you. Detachment gave you back to yourself. So become unmovable, not in bitterness, but in dignity. Not in ego, but in peace. Let your standards be the most loving thing you ever give yourself. Let your calm be the boundary that protects your heart. Let your self-respect be the new home you refuse to leave. Because the moment you stop abandoning yourself is the moment you stop begging anyone else to choose you. And you finally become the person you've been waiting for all along. An avoidance strategy often depends on your predictability. And I need you to hear that without blaming yourself, because you were never too much, you were simply consistent. And in a connection that lacks consistency, your consistency becomes the engine that keeps the whole thing running. You were the one who checked in, the one who repaired, the one who softened the hard moments, the one who made space for their silence, the one who turned their, I don't know, into patience. And for a while, it felt noble, it felt loving, it felt like you were proving you were safe, proving you weren't like the people who hurt them before. But slowly, without even noticing, you became predictable in a way that trained the dynamic to survive without their full participation. Predictability, in a healthy relationship, is security. It's trust, it's steadiness, it's two people who know they can rely on each other. But in an avoidant dynamic, your predictability can get misused because it becomes a guarantee that they can withdraw and still keep you. They can go quiet and still have you waiting. They can be inconsistent and still receive your loyalty. They can disappear into their comfort zone and return when it suits them, because you've shown them, again and again, that you will hold the connection open even when they are not holding it with you. And the painful part is you didn't do that because you had no standards. You did it because you had a heart. You did it because you loved deeply. You did it because when you felt a bond, you didn't treat it like something disposable. You tried to understand them. You tried to be patient. You tried to be the calm in their storm. But that's why this keynote matters, because once you see how predictability fuels their strategy, you stop making their behavior a mystery. You stop thinking, why do they only show up when I'm pulling away? Why do they get warm when I go quiet? Why do they act interested when I detach? Why do they suddenly remember my value when I stop reminding them? It's because their strategy is not always a plan they consciously sit down and create. It's often a pattern their nervous system has learned. The pattern says, closeness feels risky, distance feels safe, and as long as you remain predictable, they can manage the relationship from a distance. They can keep your love within reach without having to step fully into vulnerability. Your predictability becomes the safety net under their fear. And as long as that net exists, they never have to confront the uncomfortable question, what happens if I lose them because I refuse to show up? This is exactly why detachment is so powerful, because detachment breaks the predictability. Not by turning you into someone cold, but by turning you into someone grounded. The moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop sending the follow-up text, the moment you stop being the one who always repairs, the moment you stop making excuses for their inconsistency, you become unpredictable to the old pattern. And unpredictability is uncomfortable for them, because now the relationship is no longer being held up by your effort alone. Now, The connection requires their participation, their courage, their accountability. And let's talk about the way predictability shows up, because it's not always obvious. Sometimes your predictability is you replying immediately, even when they took days. Sometimes it's you always being available, even when they were never consistent. Sometimes it's you accepting the bare minimum and calling it progress, because at least it's something. Sometimes it's you forgiving without changed behavior, because you want to keep the peace. Sometimes it's you staying emotionally open even after they've shown you, repeatedly, that they can't handle emotional intimacy without pulling away. It's you teaching them, you can do this to me, and I will still stay. And I know why you did it. Because you believed love could heal. Because you believed your patience could soften them. Because you believed if you loved them correctly, they would finally feel safe enough to stop running. But here is the truth that will set you free. Love does not heal someone who refuses to face themselves. Love can support growth, but it cannot replace it. Love can be a light, but it cannot be their spine. And when you keep being predictable in the face of inconsistency, you are not healing them, you are protecting them from consequences. Detachment is you stopping that protection. Detachment is you saying, I will not be the cushion under your avoidance. I will not be the person who keeps showing you that you can withdraw and still receive devotion. I will not be the one who turns your silence into my responsibility. Detachment is you ending the unspoken contract where you do the emotional work and they receive the emotional benefits. And the moment you do that, they have to change their strategy because the old strategy doesn't work on someone who is no longer predictable. This is where it gets emotional, because when you break predictability, you will feel guilt. You will feel like you're being harsh. You will feel like you're abandoning them. You will feel like you're becoming the kind of person you never wanted to be. And that guilt can pull you right back into the old dynamic, because your heart will say, what if they're struggling? What if they're hurting? What if they need me? But listen, you can care about someone and still refuse to be used by their pattern. You can have compassion and still have boundaries. You can love and still say, I cannot keep paying for a connection you refuse to build with me. Because the real issue is not that they're avoidant. The real issue is what your predictability allowed. It allowed the relationship to exist in a half state, where you were committed and they were comfortable, where you were investing and they were evaluating, where you were building and they were visiting. And you deserve more than being visited. You deserve being chosen with actions, with consistency, with clarity. You deserve someone who doesn't need to lose you to realize your value. So when you detach, you're not trying to manipulate them. You're returning the responsibility to where it belongs. You're saying, if you want me, you have to show up. If you want access to my heart, you have to earn trust. If you want closeness, you have to participate in closeness. And that is where their strategy shifts, because now they can't rely on your predictability to keep the connection alive. They can't assume you'll always be waiting. They can't keep you in the gray zone forever. And if they respond to your detachment with breadcrumbs, with vague check-ins, with small taps to see if you still respond, that's not love, that's a test of predictability. They're checking if the old you is still there, the you who makes it easy for them to stay emotionally safe while still receiving emotional access. And your job is not to punish them for testing, your job is to read it clearly. Your job is to protect your peace. Your job is to stay steady, because steadiness is what breaks the cycle. Because once you stop being predictable, you start becoming powerful. You stop reacting to their distance like it's a verdict about your worth. You stop measuring your value by their attention. You stop living on their timeline. And the most beautiful part is this, you start coming home to yourself. You start building a life where your mood is not controlled by their inconsistency. You start choosing people who choose you back. You start recognizing that the love you were trying to earn was never supposed to be earned. It was supposed to be shared, freely, consistently, safely. So yes, detachment changes their strategy because it removes the comfort of your predictability. But more importantly, detachment changes your strategy because you stop making love a chase. You stop making connection a negotiation. You stop making your heart a place where someone can come and go without consequence. And when you finally become unpredictable to the old pattern, you become predictable to something better, self-respect, peace, and the kind of love that doesn't require you to disappear in order to be kept.